Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is with the beautiful Jodie Nolan, who is here to walk us through scarcity patterning and financial literacy. So it's actually the most fantastic conversation that Bridget and I are super lit up about. It's really humble and has the most insightful and easeful discussions around wealth and your own wealth management that I've heard in a really long time. So I really, really hope that you enjoy it as much as we did, because Jodie is certainly an exceptional and extraordinary woman who's had an exceptional and extraordinary life path. And you're really going to enjoy listening to her story and all of the wisdom that she's mined out of some of the deepest, darkest tragedies of her life. So we do really hope you enjoy that. Remember, all of the connection points for Jodie can be found in the show notes. And before we jump in today, I'd love to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au, scroll on down to the red banner, pop in your email address, and once every couple of weeks we're sending you off an email that just has links to everything that's happening and is out in the world, so that you can pick and choose where you'd love to dive deeper. So nourishingthemother.com.au.
So Jodie is an economist, a senior financial advisor and author. She has been called one of Australia's most admired and respected financial advisors. With a master's in applied finance, Jodie is a best-selling author, financial commentator and owner of financial advice firm Economist Group Wealth Management. Her passion for money matters, small business, and talent for communicating the often arduous jargon has made her highly sought after for various business groups as a speaker and trusted financial advisor to her clients. We're going to jump into this interview with Jodie, and we hope that you love it. So welcome, Jodie, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're excited.
We are really excited. So Julie and I started this series this month called Reimagining Motherhood, and I just thought you cannot reimagine motherhood without looking at wealth and mothering and seeing mothering as a place to call in abundance, not a place to survive or just get by on the scraps financially. So that's really what this conversation's about.
Okay, perfect.
How does that sit with you, even hearing that? Because you're a mum.
Yep.
And you are financially established and teach and help and guide people within the financial realm. How do you feel when you hear that sentence around reimagining motherhood? We can't do it without reimagining wealth.
Do you know, it's not lost on me that you're interviewing me about this today, because I wrote a best-selling book about the collapse of everything in 2008, and at the time I had a newborn baby. So I was in a hospital when we lost everything, millions, and I wrote a best-selling book about it because I was trying to nurse my first child. So I had all of the fallout of losing wealth, and at the same time being a new mummy. So for me, that journey was massive.
I know, me too.
Yeah. And then I fell pregnant with my son when my daughter was 6 weeks old, and we were dealing with Australia's biggest corporate collapse. So we had 60 Minutes on our doorstep, and I had all the problems with no milk as a result of stress and all of that stuff. So for me, that conjures up a whole heap of stuff I've needed to work on in the last 10 or 12 years. And what I do understand, though, is that it's such a conflicting time, because often you're going back to one wage, when you've been on two wages, and it's all new and you don't know what you're doing, and it's so expensive too, So the whole becoming a mum for so many people is a time of beautiful experiences and all that sort of stuff, but then it's like fear versus greed, it's the total opposite ends of the spectrum, because you're going back to one wage, or in some cases, very limited money. And then that can create a lot of fear and a lack of confidence, and then that compounds. And for women especially, we're that time when we're raising our children, we're out of the workforce. So we've got reduced super, reduced skill sets. It's very, very difficult for a lot of people.
It's a great phase of vulnerability, isn't it? You really, you just took me right back to when I was pregnant with my first, and I remember calculating how much maternity leave I was getting, and looking at every bit of place where every bit of money was going, and then you've also got that kind of loss of identity, and the work so often pulls women back, because it's not only the money, but it's like this is what society says you are worthy of if you have this job and this paycheck, because society is not really valuing your mothering. So it's not only the financial abundance piece, it's your worth as a person, lumped into that.
Nailed it. You've absolutely nailed it. And then that creates the scarcity mindset too, or it cements what was already there from your upbringing and your childhood. And then you've also got the conflict of returning to work. And for a lot of people, that's reduced hours, and the conflict of having to work but wanting to parent and not working. We're always in that struggle.
It's a minefield, isn't it? Do you know, one of the things that has always pulled me forward in this path as well is considering that in Australia, one of our greatest demographics of homelessness is divorced women 50 plus. And I find that fascinating as a statistic, because what that really represents is that women have become so financially disempowered by virtue of taking on this established role of motherhood that is without abundance, financial literacy, or power. And when the usually man in that relationship who continues to build and sustain financial literacy, power and control removes himself, and in many cases punishes that woman, she's got nothing. So I find that so desperately heartbreaking that I always look forward and think, no, that we can, as women, this is one of the greatest steps forward in feminism, is to build and claim our own financial abundance, power and literacy, so we're not at the mercy of anyone else.
I was having this conversation this morning with a client of mine who was working in this area about this exact same topic, and we're both very passionate about trying to create maybe modular housing for women who are in that demographic, where they can have community around them and access to support. So it's not lost on me that we're talking about this now. But you're exactly right. I'm also twice divorced. I didn't have children with my first husband, but my second husband I've recently, the last 2.5 years. So I understand that splitting assets and starting again, and I'm the primary care provider for my two children. They don't see their dad much anymore, and they're 10 and 12. So getting into 10 and 11, getting into that space of I'm fortunate because I come from the finance background. You know, I've done this for 25 years, master's degrees, but with all of that experience, I can still lose it all. So what hope does the average person have when, you know, the three biggest things that affect our lives that we stress about and we lay awake at night is relationships, is health and money, and none of it's taught adequately at school. So then we can only get that from our parents and how we were raised and that environment. And that in itself becomes problematic as we move through the generations, because, you know, what I would have experienced, you know, I'm in my mid-40s, you know, as a child, it's completely different to what the children need now to prepare them for 15 to 20 years' time. So, yeah, you're exactly right. You know, I lobby hard for women in my position. You know, my background is I was number one in the country as a financial advisor for one of the big four banks, and I've grown up in a male-dominated industry where it's highly competitive, you know, and women, especially blondes, can't be smart and intelligent, and you know, it's a fight I've had my whole life. I had to go and get a master's degree in finance just to have the runs on the board academically as well, you know. So I do know it well, and I love what you girls are doing in this space, because we need to have conversations around this. And, you know, I do a lot of education around money that doesn't cost people anything, because we need to know. And it's just a simple, basic thing. And once you start empowering people to remove the blocks that they have themselves, or even just understand why they're thinking the way they do, that creates space to allow new things to come in and new experiences and new opportunities. It's kind of exciting.
How much do you see is unconscious loyalty to family pattern play a role in where kids get, or where adults find themselves in adulthood? Because as I mentioned before we jumped on the podcast, this sense of I feel like I'm almost like I've repatterned my parents, and I almost feel like I can't break through the ceiling of like where they were at. And so often what can happen in family systems is that children almost don't want to outgrow the safety of what the parents have laid down. And in the case of financial literacy on the whole in our country being so poor, is this also what you see contributing to so many people getting stuck in these kind of, you know, in mediocrity essentially, rather than busting beyond that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Anecdotally, yeah, I do see that. You know, if I look at people who are very, very wealthy, like as in hundreds of millions of dollars worth of personal net wealth, they often don't have a circle around them. You know, they've lost family members as a result, because they've needed to grow or break through that, and they can't take these people with them, which is sad. And you know, we've got tall poppy syndrome in Australia chronically. So instead of celebrating somebody else's success, people find ways to tear them down or second guess them, or, you know, but there is that indoctrinated belief patterning system that the way you're raised, you know, money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. You know, it's a never ending. And I find myself as a mum, I have to be firm in my own boundaries, because I don't want my children just thinking that they can have whatever they want, but I don't want them growing up thinking that we can't afford things either and they can't ask, you know. It's empowering them to understand money and finances just like I would with their health and their relationships, and prioritising that. You know, bringing those lessons in. Yeah, because we do tend to, you know, you buy the house, you start paying it off, you know, when you start to become successful, sometimes people can hit the skids because they feel like they don't deserve it. And then it comes down to, you know, am I good enough? Do I deserve this?
And what we also see too. Yeah, and I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, too, and as women, we're also socialised to say that, like, in order to have love, you need to belong. And if you don't belong, which you might be, if you don't belong in the realm of like what we see is okay, then you also don't have love. Like, and that's almost like a survival patterning in so many women too, is that you need to be seen to be good and nice and agreeable and belong. and if you get too high up, then you don't belong anymore, and that can be a visceral fear that some women have as well about being cast out then.
Totally. And it's lonely. You often hear people say that it's lonely at the top because one of my very good friends is a specialist coach, and she's a coach for high performance people. So people who have been the best in their game, like Olympians. And then when you're no longer an Olympian, who are you? Where's your place in the world? And it comes back to that question that you had before where you were saying that, if you're a mum now, so does that mean I'm not an economist? Does that mean I'm not a financial advisor? And so for me, it was compounded more because, I was losing everything, and I wasn't an advisor anymore, and you're just now a mum, and I'd lost my career and all. Well, I thought I did. It took me years to realize that I'm in charge of my own future and to take the reins back again. And sometimes I think it's okay to have moments, days, weeks, months, years where you are reflecting and you're not sure and you are scared and you are vulnerable, and you're allowed to be all of those things. So I was very hard on myself at that time. I didn't think I was allowed to be any of that. I had to show strength. I had to be a good mom. We're just so hard on ourselves, and it takes a lot of time sometimes to realize that actually I'm in charge of my own future. And surrounding yourself with people who want to support your growth, like this is exactly what this podcast is doing. You're surrounding yourself with a group of incredible people who are little professional reminders that you can do these things. You can achieve what you want to. So, and you don't have to be the product of your upbringing. You don't have to live the same story that your parents lived. Mm-hmm. You can create a completely different story for yourself, and you're allowed to want to be successful. And successful might mean that you've beaten cancer. Successful might be that you can afford to buy your parents a house. Successful might be that you're loved. Like everybody's different, but we need to embrace. We need to be kinder on ourselves, and we need to embrace the learning and the understanding around everything, including money. And money is often, people feel they've got everything else in their life sorted, but they're poor. So they can't afford to do the courses that they want to do, and they can't afford to live the life that they want to live because they don't have the means to do it. But they can. It's just learning how.
So I have two questions for you there. How do you define success?
Ooh. I always find this a hard question because it depends on where I'm at in my life.
It's movable.
So, yeah, it is, and it changes all the time. So it's kind of malleable. When I decide, so for me, success sometimes is raising two beautiful children. Like if I can get them to adulthood and they're beautiful, kind, well-adjusted people, that to me will be successful. When I'm able to retire early, or when I'm able to be philanthropic and just give like I used to, that is success. Having a partner in my life that respects me and loves me for me. I don't have that in my world. So that to me would be lovely, to have a loving relationship. So it varies, and it changes. And I think it's important to focus not on necessarily one just definition of success, but realize that it's in different areas of your life. So, and coming from a lot of wealth in the past, you can easily lose it. So if it's the same as being super healthy and then you're not, you get diagnosed with something. You have to not focus your outcome on it being a certain way, because when that changes, which is life, because it does, then that's when we come crashing down. Because what I've learned over having been very wealthy and all that sort of stuff, to then losing it, to then making it back. And I tell you, your experts need to walk the talk.
I was going to ask you that too, because that's the thing. If you're wanting to do something extraordinary, you want the financial advisor who's done that, not just learned how to do it, right? So, I mean, I imagine that the wisdom that you have, having, because I've listened to other interviews with you where you said that you could have retired, I think, in your early 30s had you not.
Yeah. Well, I was supposed to be retired when my daughter was born, and then it just went pear-shaped, and when you get those curveballs that just come out of nowhere, that's where you build resilience. So I don't know what this lifetime is meant for me yet, except that my experiences anecdotally help other people, and then I can show strength and resilience and help them through whatever it is that they need to do. And I guess that's the idea of interviewing and podcasts, is learning from others, so that we can sort of fast track our own journey, so we don't have to learn from the mistakes of others. We can try and
sharing of stories. It's powerful. So I wondered, my other question for you was, how did you, during that time or during that process, because I love that you said sometimes it takes days, weeks, months or years to learn what you need to learn, or to declutter, or to because we're so in for, sometimes there's phases and seasons where you have to descend and go deep before you come back out with the goods. So I'm interested in how you came to really solidly realize that you were in charge of your own destiny, and specifically financial abundance.
If I'm brutally honest, it's still a journey. It was a few years of Supreme Court class actions, winding up assets, and so I didn't go bankrupt. So, and I had a newborn, and I was pregnant, and then I had a toddler. Like, honestly, the first 4 years, I don't even know how I got through.
How did you? How did you do that?
Yeah, because I want to know that too. Because I imagine kind of complete collapse in that, right?
Because when we talk about capacity, right, that's like next level.
No, I don't know. Like, for those of you that have read my story or just Google it, because it's like, the Sydney Morning Herald did a whole page on me.
I didn't know this, actually, so I'm going to go and read more about it.
Honestly, and it's exhausting. I used to do a lot of public speaking about this, talking to accountants and whatever else, because it's Australia's biggest corporate collapse, and no one was talking about it unless you're involved at the time, and it changed the face of financial literacy in Australia, or finance full stop. All the banks changed, everything. So it's pivotal. But at the time, I was just a mum then. I'd gone from the biggest company in Australia's, was $6 billion in funds under advice, and to nothing, to 60 Minutes on my doorstep, and me going, holy crap, how did this all happen? And then, of course, all of that stuff that goes after. I was trying to get I was expressing milk every hour. I was taking all of the supplements, the natural supplements, to try and increase. Nothing was working. And then I'd feed her, so I had no sleep. And I just don't know, to be brutally honest. And it got pretty difficult there on a couple of occasions, because I had monster life insurance policies too. So, at a couple of points I'd written goodbye letters. Wow. So I know, because, there was, it was very, 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 very tough. So that's why I say sometimes you just got to be kind on yourself, and it's not forever. And I think that when we get lost in stuff, it's because you lose hope that there's going to be something better than this, and you don't know how. Or so, reaching out to people. I couldn't reach out though, because my pride wouldn't let me, my ego wouldn't let me, and it's only in hindsight that I can see it in others now. looking back, because we're conditioned that we have to be strong, especially me in my game. And, sometimes, and I've got a financial planning firm now myself that I own, and I sometimes think I don't have thick enough skin. And then I think about my clients and I think, you know what? No, because I love them and they, I've got awesome clients. So I only attract awesome people. So, you've got to come at it from that level. I think, as you said before, you guys have the most amazing demographic and they're very engaged, and that's because you attract people like that. That's because they get it. They understand you too and what you're trying to achieve, and it's amazing. And so you just have to trust that you are listening to this story for a reason, that you're engaged in these certain ways for reasons, because we're moving through into bigger things. And I don't know what they are. I'm not sure how they'll play out, but I write for a Trading Edge magazine, which I normally have around here, as a geopolitical expert for them. I've written for them.
I could talk to you on this topic for hours. I reckon I'm fascinated with what you have to say around that, but that's not this podcast.
Maybe another time. Let's bring it back.
It's all encompassing, right? So if you just get your family right and your headspace right, and realize that you don't have to live the same patterns that your parents did, that this is your life that you're creating for yourselves, and then find the experts and the tools if you don't know how to do something to make it happen. And there's so many areas, like when you are trying to find $2 to buy milk and bread, and I know what that's like, to see a course that's thousands of dollars, you're like, I'm never going to get out of this. But trust me when I say that there's people around that will help. You just got to reach out, and, there's a lot of us that do pro bono work to help people, or we can point people in the right directions, or there's amazing podcasts like this where you get information. So, and if you're lucky enough to be a member and get, first access and other things, then that's just enhancing your life more and more and putting priority on the areas that you need it. So, yeah.
How do you suggest
I
someone...
could talk for days.
I know, and we love it because you're totally speaking our language. How do you suggest people start if they know they've got family lineage blocks or a scarcity mindset that they know sits deeper in their DNA-esque being? How do you suggest they start moving towards an abundance state of being and breaking through those blocks or family lineage patterns?
Yeah, good question. So that sort of comes into the psychology of money, which in itself is huge. But the first thing that I would think is just recognizing that is a thing, that you do carry that DNA through, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And all you need to do is say to yourself, whether you write it down and I don't journal, I should, but I don't. But I do often write things on my bathroom mirror to remind me of what I need to be focusing on. And sometimes it is things like I am enough. Sometimes you're allowed to just say that's their story, and even write it down. Like, write out how your childhood was around money. What were the things that they said and they did and they acted, and forgive them for it, because they don't know any different either. They were raised by people who probably did the same thing, no doubt. And thank them for that experience. Thank them for like in your mind, thank them for that experience, and then just say, from today, it's different. And you'll forget tomorrow, but then you might put on your bathroom mirror, from today, it's different. And then everything that you're doing is serving you now, not who you were yesterday, not who your parents are. And you'll have conversations that will bring you back into that scarcity mindset. We shouldn't do something. And, the other thing that I say to my clients too, which I think is so helpful, take a snapshot of where you are today. What's all the credit cards I've got? What's my car loans? What's my home loan? My rent? Like what? And don't even call it a budget. And I've got a great idea for people who hate to budget, which I can tell you if you want. But take a snapshot today and diarise 6 months from now, and then diarise 6 more months from now, and then look at it. Because people go, oh, what's in my super? They don't even think about their super. But you need to go, how much am I worth today? So you could be negative equity. You could owe too much. What's all my debt? Oh, I've got $80,000 in credit card debt, whatever it is. But 6 months from now, you might only have $70,000 worth of credit card debt. That is huge. That's incredible. That needs to be celebrated. And then those little wins, because if you go to work every day and you're doing, especially, or even if you don't go to work, husband goes to work, and you're being a mum and you're going, oh, I'm just being a mum, you know, that's not even it, because you're not feeling like you're contributing to the family. You are as a unit, and you need to stock take as a unit. And in 6 months' time, you need to sit down with your partner if you've got one, and stock take and say, hey, babe, I know this seems really heavy and hard, and like we're not getting anywhere, and we're fighting about money and bills and whatever. But actually, you know, our supers are up 10 grand. We've got 5,000 paid off the home loan. Like we're making progress here. It doesn't have to be buying the second investment property. It doesn't have to be big things, because those little things add up to the big thing. And sometimes we can get paralyzed with making that next big decision, but in actual fact, all your little decisions each day is the same as that decision to just draw the line in the sand and go, that lineage from my family is a story that I don't need to take on. It's a story.
Love that so much.
So you're telling yourself that you won't be successful. That's just a story you're telling yourself. If I think about it, if I come in and saw you today in your financial affairs, would you be proud to show me your filing cabinet full of your bills and your budget, or would you be like, oh my God, I don't even know where all my supers are. I don't even know how much I owe on my MyStore card. Did you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, and that bit's easy to clean up. You know, it's annoying and it's horrible and it's really crappy, but that bit's easy to clean up. Then you work on the stories around the limiting mind belief. They're just stories, and you do the line in the sand and you thank them for that education that's got you to where you are today, but you are moving towards something more exciting for yourself, whatever that is, whether it's education.
Before we jumped on, just while we're on the topic of the psychology of money, you had said a sentence along the lines of, money has its own energy. What does that mean for you?
Yeah. So every single time I meet people, couples, whatever, they give money an energy. They either are negative around it. Money doesn't grow on trees, and we can't afford that, and we're not doing this, and the business isn't making enough money. You know, there's all like that. Or, I've got so much money, I don't even need to worry about it. Like, I could just buy whatever I want. I can just do whatever I want. And, you know, I find that the people who are very successful and the people who do well don't put an energy around it. They don't even, it's got its own flow and it's got its own energy, but they respect it. So they respect the ability for money to make money. So that might mean that they understand that to borrow $100,000 from a bank, like at the moment you can borrow it for 2 or 3%. So that's $2,000 or $3,000 a year to lease the use of $100,000. Oh my goodness, what could I do with $100,000? What investment can I make? So, that is just a decision. So when I talk to people about their financial stuff, I try to remove the emotions from it, the decision-making emotions. So anytime people make financial decisions, probably one of the biggest things, and this will be key and pivotal to whoever's listening, is that you look at decisions around money, how you spend it, how you earn it, what your goals and plans are, and then you attach an emotion to it. Like, oh, I really want to live in that house, and yeah, our mortgage is through the roof, but I really love the house, and like there's an energy around it. Or I hate my work, I don't want to go, I hate my job. So, and they're emotions that you're attaching to a transaction that is like, it's just a transaction. So you do a service and you get paid as a result, or you buy a product and you get the product as a result. So, and that's just a transaction. But we attach an emotion to it and say, am I giving enough for that value? And then that comes down to, what are your values? So the psychology of it all is so hard, because I can go and see a client who will pay me $30,000 a year to look after their financial affairs, that the next person will go, 30,000, oh my God, that's so much money. What value could you possibly give them for 30,000? And you know what? I'm like, well, she's just gone through a divorce, and her husband has got unvested shares in his share plan portfolio that's worth about 1.2 million. So it wasn't picked up by the lawyers, wasn't picked up by the accountants. So that 30,000 fee that I've just charged her has netted her half of 1.2 million. That's worth it.
It looks like small change when you start to look at it like that, right?
I know, but then, and so that's where it's just the and then the values and the energy. If you can just look at things and go, what emotion am I attaching to this? So when people who are very wealthy, who do exceptionally well with their own finances, often don't have an emotional attachment to what it is that they're doing. So and that's particularly true in business. They make decisions based on the due diligence. Is it viable or isn't it? If it's not viable, we don't do it. If it's viable, we do it. And some of us are guilty of going, oh, because we want to and we love to, and I know it doesn't make us any money, but it's the idea of it. Yeah, I know, right?
So good.
But
I love it so much.
Yeah, but then so that's another whole conversation then. So some people say, I'm all for that. So life is really short too. So if they want to spend $300,000 on a motor car, and instead of buying a house, that's an emotional decision that they're making. And if they're aware of that and they want it because it makes their heart happy, then they've got to do that too. So
I really love that. Can I ask you what wealth management means?
Oh, yeah. I've never been asked that before.
Have you not? I was like, as I was reading through all of your website, I'm like, yeah, what does it really mean? Because I'm just so you know, I'm working on this. It's been like, how many years, Bridgie? A 4-year process of me doing this decluttering to get to where I am now, where I've completely bust through my lineage patterning. So as I stand here today, I'm like fucking celebrating the shit out of that. Thank you. So then I'm looking now at, I've done the past. Now I'm ready for the future. What does wealth management mean? Because it is not part of my knowing system.
Okay. Well, it is now. So because it's simple. You start with the little things. So if you look at it as micro and macro, that's probably the easiest thing to do. I don't know why this is coming up. Look at it micro and macro. Have you guys still got me there?
Yeah, we've got you. We're good. We didn't lose you.
Oh, okay. So we just need to address those two aspects. So let's look at micro. Micro is your everyday finances. And this is the bit that people go, oh, I don't want to do it, Jodie. This is torture. So, and it doesn't have to be rocket science. All you need to do is take a stock take. So let's say get 3 highlighters and your bank statements, you print them off from all your different accounts. And let's say pink is the stuff that you can't change. So that's your mortgage or your rent or your car loan, whatever. Go through, highlight everything that you can't change in pink. And then yellow will be the things that you could change or reduce, like Telstra or Netflix if you had to, whatever. And that's all yellow. And then go through, and green is all the BWS and the Target and the corner shop. And if you go through and everything is pink, I'm going to go, holy shit, you are really, there's no surplus here. There's no fluff. There's nothing. But if you go through and everything's green and you're complaining about having no money, I'll be like, all right, well, we need to have a yarn. So because whilst you need to spend, sometimes we're just doing these incidental things and that add up, like a bottle of wine every night that's $15 adds up. So I'm speaking from experience here. I'm saying it. I'm just kidding. But if you see that and that's a pattern, there's room that we can change there. There's ways that we can create, you can free up cash flow to do more things with it. And that's essentially the goal of wealth management, is to either earn more or free up your existing cash flow to do things. So you work and you need to have investments that work for you. So the investments is more your macro picture. So we're still on micro at the moment. So streamline that. Get rid of the subscriptions that you don't need. Like I realized the other day when I was doing reconciling my accounts, which I have someone else do because I hate it, that I'm subscribing to a Sydney Morning Herald that I don't read. So, so little things like that that add up. And then when you can honestly say, I kind of roughly know where all my money goes each week and I feel confident that, I'm allocating different parts, then let's say, okay, what's my macro view? And this is where you need to reverse engineer it, because 5 years from now, where do I want to be? Do I want to have a second house? Do I want to have my mortgage paid off? Do I want to have a deposit for a house? Do I even want a house? Like in the current environment, we're moving into the biggest recessionary environment we will ever see in our lifetimes. And more millionaires are made in these downturns than ever in an upswing. So we are going to, even though it's going to be really dire and really hard, we've got incredible opportunity here as well. So, so
before we move on, sorry, can I just pull you back on that? Because I get it in my head and then I'm like, but how does that work? Because I've read all of the history books that say exactly that thing. And I'm like, but how? How does that work? Like, how does that actually work?
The recessionary environment or
the more millionaires in a recession or a depression?
Yeah, because innovation happens in recessionary environments. Innovation, new concepts, new ideas, new ways of doing things, out with the old, in with the new. And quite often they say, so the history books, that's when light bulbs and light was invented, electricity. That's so the recessionary periods, it must be really intelligent people with far too much time on their hands, maybe. I don't know. But for the mere mortals, it is when everybody else, so all my clients, majority of them, are in cash and fixed interest type investments at the moment. I've got very few in the stock market because we're at absolute record highs. And I should preface this by saying this is just general advice, not financial advice.
Yes.
So, but when the markets fall, which they inevitably will because they always rise and they always fall, that's a given, then that'll be an amazing buying opportunity. So one of the first time around when I was making money in the stock market particularly was on a bull run when I got in and I was contributing regularly. So if you have just one house, then all of your asset, all your money is tied up in one asset. Whereas if you invest into shares, say, which everyone thinks is terrifying because they don't understand it, but it's dead easy. If you just buy an index fund, you're buying the top 200 Australian companies. Now, if we have a 50% market fall, like we did in the GFC in 2008, all those share prices fall, you're getting them at half price. So then you buy and hold them for the next 10 years, you're laughing. So, and and you've got time to learn this. You've got time to pick people's brains. You've got time. It doesn't have to be scary for you. You don't have to tell yourself that story that you don't understand investing, so you're not going to do it. You've got time to learn, and then you've got time to be able to do it for yourself because it's not that hard to learn the basics. I'm more than happy to share with your readership and your viewers maybe a one-on-one lesson in that sort of thing. And they don't have to do anything via me, obviously. They can learn to do it for themselves.
Sign me up, Jodie. I'm like,
yes,
I need.
But it's then, and see, then you've got assets in all quadrants. If you go into the property market, that's fantastic. Then you're diversifying into share markets. You've got your super, which is in shares, and you really need to understand how that's invested. And then if you've got a business, you're 100% shareholder of that business. So you've got multiple ways to make money, and then that's sort of the end game. That's what you want. You want lots of different investments, avenues making you money, that's growing your net wealth, that every 6 months you just do a stock take on and go, how much am I worth now? And then that's empowering. That alone is crazy awesome. Because then you look forward to, like, I'm a bit of I'm not a spreadsheet person, but I am when it comes to assets and liabilities, because I like every few months just to go in and go, what's that at now? Oh, there you go. That's interesting. So because it's a personal thing, and especially because I'm on my own now with 2 kids and I'm not sharing it with anyone. I don't have to have the, I look at my divorce as a positive, because it means now I don't have anyone else I have to ask for their opinion on anything. Can I buy that lounge? Yep. Yeah. Can I get that car? Yep. I don't even have to ask anybody for their opinion on it. So
what do you think about financial wealth being a major contributor to self-worth?
Oh, huge. And that comes back to the women over 50 who can't afford anything. The kids have left the home. And this is a direct correlation to she should be barefoot in the kitchen. Yeah. It's that generation before them, like my grandparents who didn't work and the husbands went out to work, and they, but they had to suck it up and stay in marriages that they didn't like and be told what, and then my mum's generation and women who are like 10 years older than me are like, what, actually I don't have to settle for being treated this way, or, that sort of thing. And they created the stand and that generation for us to go, actually, no, we expect more, we deserve more, we want a partnership. This is an equal thing here. And there's, but conditioning comes back to the mother is the nurturer. It's so conflicting for so many. But when it comes to the wealth attachment, when you don't have money, you have really low self-esteem, a lower opinion of yourself. I see women a lot who can't get into the workforce. They don't dress smartly anymore because they can't afford to. It's a big thing. And even just from my own experience, knowing how worthless even that term.
Yeah, it's awful, isn't it? Yeah.
So, I don't know. And then that comes down to being happy, doesn't it, too? They say money can't buy you happiness, but it buys you a better class of misery, I suppose.
I think there's such a thing as happy money. I totally.
Yeah, and money also money amplifies character. So it's not like so much that there's, that our culture loves to equate like the rich bitch or the greedy old man, but money is just a vehicle to amplify whoever you are, right? Because you're going to have both.
You're exactly right. Because if you're a shitty person in real life, you're just a shittier, richer person, and I've met them. Honestly. So, and sometimes people who have really significant net worth feel that they can bully and intimidate and berate and belittle, and they stand on people to get where they need to go, and I don't know how they sleep at night, but, then that comes down to just the character of person, isn't it? And then I look at other people who use their high net wealth to be really philanthropic and to give, but they do it privately. They don't do it for notoriety or anything, you know, and I find that so beautiful, that happens, you know, and I don't know, I just think, and it's very hard not to judge, isn't it? When you see somebody and they're driving a shitty car and they're living in a shitty house, and you think, you know, what bad decisions did you make to get here? And sometimes you can't control those decisions. Sometimes life just throws all this stuff at you. You know, if you had asked, if you were interviewing me 12 years ago, no, 2011, what was that? Anyway, 9 years ago, it'd be a very different conversation to the one today. You know, I was a broken, properly broken new mum, and so that's why I sort of always preface these things by saying, try not to be judgy, try to be kind to yourself. Like sometimes if you can see somebody else hurting, or, you know, and if you can't give and you can't help, sometimes introducing them to people who can, you know, like this podcast, like, you know, you're giving people tools and strategies, which is incredible.
What do you think is important for our kids to know or learn? What should we be teaching them?
Oh, that's a gold question. Okay, so without getting onto big tangents about cashless societies.
It's certainly the conversation now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so we are headed that way. I've got no doubt that in 20 years from now we won't be dealing with the fiat currency we currently have. I used to really desperately hope for a cohesive one world, you know, beautiful trade between countries, and we were headed that way, and now we've moved into this really protectionism, populistic type mentality of this is mine, go away, it's not yours. I'm hoping that will change over time and that we don't move into that sort of society. But teaching your children, being aware that they are not going to do that financial transaction that we talk about. You know, the whole lemonade stand where they're, you know, I can't even find $2 coins to give to my kids on free dress days you know, so just appreciate the fact that everything's going to be online for them. So teaching them good money skills. So my kids have got what they call Spriggy accounts, so I'm not endorsing.
Yeah, I just got my son one of those.
Yeah, and so I can control money going in. They've got an app where they can see how much is there. They've got a debit card, and you know, that has been a massive learning curve, because when they walk home from school, I can see how much they're buying from the IGA. And they're not allowed to buy from the IGA, but with the Sprig, you know, and then that conjures up the conversation about savings. So then they go online and I make them transfer money out into a savings account, and we have family chores that they do, that they have to do, they don't get paid for. They're just expected to do it. But then they've got bigger things like washing the car and stuff like that they earn pocket money for. So, you know, just the value of working for money, but also, do you know what I find fascinating, and which is really important to embrace in children? Screen time obviously is a massive issue, and I won't go there. But my children can, in their heads, convert Roblox money to USD to AUD like that.
Oh my gosh.
Because they play the Roblox game with their friends, and they need to they have to work in the Roblox game building cities, and so they earn money driving pizzas or in this game. And then if you buy them a $10 Roblox gift card, they can go, Mum, I can get a better something if I have got this much $10, which is and they'll do the US equivalent to AUD to Roblox in their heads. So that is the start of the generation of digital currency. So don't discount people who say, oh no, we won't ever move to that. No, that our children are already trading in currencies that don't exist.
So true.
So that is going to be huge. So 20 years from now, so I don't own Bitcoin, but I own a lot of cryptocurrencies. So understanding blockchain technology. So blockchain technology is incredible. It's already here with us. Our Australian Stock Exchange has moved to blockchain technology because it's instant and the trading happens instantaneous. So when you buy or sell a stock, it's instant. Whereas before you needed days in a clearinghouse, a bit like when money went into your bank, you have to wait 2 days for it to clear. So that instant technology is here with us, and that instant technology is something that we need to learn and we need to understand because our kids will be using it heavily and in their everyday transactions. And so that will come down to changes in the way we trade. So the US dollar has always been the prominent dollar. Everyone trades globally in this US dollar, right? But not anymore. Countries like Japan and Russia are going, we're going to trade in our own currency, bugger the US, we're keeping them out of it. So once that sort of and then that flow on effect will flow down to the next generation because they'll be looking for a currency or a trade form that's not necessarily cash or like the money that we know and understand. They'll be trading in Roblox for all we know. So, yeah, that's definitely the next generation.
Some of the resistance for a lot of parents in terms of moving to, say, app-based money or like accounts is that, kids don't have that felt sense of cash in their hand and of actually seeing money and feeling like the ownership and then the giving over of money and the exchange of money. But it sounds like apps like Spriggy and other ways to move money online can still teach those skills. Can get, because the issue we're trying to deal with is to not get our kids get sucked into things like Afterpay, for example.
Right.
And
yeah. So the biggest problem I see in 20-year-olds now is Zip money, Afterpay, credit cards, heavily indebted.
It's actually scary. I wonder about the psychology of it. I don't have to wait. I can just have it now.
Yep. Instant gratification. And then that releases the endorphins in the brain, doesn't it? That go, oh, I've got it. And then where's the next hit coming from? And so social media is the same. It's like exactly the same. So it's that, and it's wanting to connect in a community where none of us are connecting. So we're getting these dopamine and serotonin hits from different aspects. I went to Time Zone for the first time the other day with my son. He goes with a mate and his mother, but I've never been. And I was blown away at the gambling environment. The flashy lights, the excitement, and the swipe your card and put it in here. And I'm like, admittedly, I did have fun racing on the dodgems and things, but all of that stuff is okay if you make your child aware of it.
Yeah.
I spoke to my son about how, that pokey section and the local pub we can't go into because people sit there all addicted. That's this environment here, Ty, and they're trying to get you to do. So we use it as a learning tool. I'd say to parents who want to give cash, like the $5 in the pocket money, and so that they can save it in a piggy bank and all that sort of stuff, that's all perfectly good. That is still a beautiful way to teach your children. Mine definitely have pocket money, and they understand you're finding 20-cent piece on the ground is like, whoa. So that is good, but please understand it's just generational. It's like when our parents used to say, you sit on the phone all night and you seen them at school all day, and the phone's in the kitchen and it's attached to a wall.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the cords.
Yeah. I know. I'm so old that my children are like, you didn't have mobile phones when you were a kid?
No. I remember when they came in.
I had to sit on. We didn't even have the internet, guys. And they're like, what?
I know.
No, oh, my God. So this is the same thing, like we're going, I don't want devices. I don't want this. I want them to understand but that's the world that they're going to grow up in. So we're better off just going, you know what? Let's heavily regulate how we're going to introduce this to them, because I don't want my children, this is personally, I want to raise very intelligent, consciously aware humans who understand the marketing messages behind the stuff they're getting spammed with on TikTok. You know, the mainstream media mess that's around. I want them to question everything, you know. I want them to not get to 15 or 16 and see, you know, questionable websites and be all like, ooh, you know, like they and that is sadly the environment. It's either going to have to be really heavily policed, but then, you know, that's like a freedom of speech, which is something I find really hard to handle. You know, we need some strong leaders at the top, and I think it starts with us.
100%.
You know?
We say that all the time. How can you change the world if you don't change mothers?
Yeah. See, that's beautiful. And this sort of thing is great because I love being with like-minded women who want to address how they're handling things and maybe go, okay, well, I hadn't thought about it like that before.
Yeah,
exactly. You know, and then move to, and once you know, consciously aware, you're more likely to change your behaviours a little bit, and then that reflects beautifully on your children and the family that you're raising, and then that reflects on your family. Like we're talking about the DNA and the family and all that sort of stuff. Slowly you can wear them down. Yeah. I've slowly worn lots of family members down that they sort of have the abundance mindset, you know, like their indoctrinated way of thinking changes when I come to them with critical thought. You know, well, what have you thought about it like this? No, because they've always just accepted the status quo. So.
How do you tell women to work with? Oh, sorry. Do you mind if I ask? I know we've used so much of your time. I'm just thinking of the women that I know that are mothers. That the hardest part for them is their own personal resistance to doing the thing that, like you mentioned before, that feels so hard. So I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, and she's like, "I like menu plan. I know exactly what our weekly budget is for food. I'm like, I have 7 accounts. I know exactly where our money goes every week because there's, you know, blah blah blah." And she's like, I've got the account I had when I was 16 and I can't even think about changing it.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? Or she goes, oh, maybe we need to start meal planning. Her husband walked in. He's like, oh, that sounds so fun. And I was like, so it's extra money.
Yeah. You know what? And that it's so hard because every single family is different. You know, I've got friends of mine that are personal trainers that spend Sundays prepping and they eat that same stuff all week. And the thought of that to me, now I know I should do that. If I did that, then I would, you know.
You'd have that body, right? Yeah.
I know. But then I could stop bitching that I'm overweight because I would actually be doing something about it. You know? So I do understand. So you do get areas in your life that you excel at, that you're really good at, and then you get areas that you fail in. Or I just reckon that if you outsource it, if you hate it. So, you know, those that can afford it often get other people to cook the meals for them and do it that way. But
with financial literacy, though, do you think before you outsource, you need to understand it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel like, is you have to still go through the process of empowering yourself before you go, now I know it, now I choose not to do it, and I know exactly how to hand that off and who's doing it and what they're doing.
Yeah, the only problem to that is, like, if I take my car to the mechanic, I know that there's an engine under there and my car's saying, needs a service. I'm like, all right, well, I don't know what service.
Yeah, fair call.
There's the car with the engine and I'll just pay for the service because I don't need to understand how the engine
totally
works.
Please fix my language. Please fix it.
No, but you know what I mean? So, but you can't blindly trust people either because not everyone has the same good heart as you. And so I love the idea, and I do it myself, is that I work with people so that they understand what it is that I'm doing for them. And that will be explaining it in layman's terms, really drilling down to, you know what, if they have to ask me the same question 15 times, over the course of a year, then and I'll explain it differently every time so that eventually they understand it. And it might just be as simple as understanding the different parts of their portfolio, sort of roughly what it is, or they might understand, why I'm doing a particular strategy like dollar costing into the markets, or why we're waiting to invest right now. But they know that something will happen when they're just waiting for, and that's important. Whereas if you just blindly hand your money over or financial affairs over, it's not, I don't know. That also could be, my issue, because I have a lot of trust issues around trusting people with a lot of things, because anecdotally I've learned that sometimes people have not got good hearts, and, and you encounter them. So, but I just think at the end of the day, if you roughly know, it's a good thing, because it's making you more aware and more well-rounded as a human. You can have better conversations because it's an area that you've learnt a little bit about. I find science fascinating, right? I don't know the periodic table, but I find understanding physics, understanding energy, that energy can't be killed. It just changes form. And we're all energy. We're all energetic beings vibrating at a rapid rate that creates matter, so that this pen is actually a pen. I find that fascinating. I don't understand it. Yeah, don't understand it. But I know enough about it to then start to think that every time I have an exchange with someone, it's an energy exchange. And choosing not to have an exchange with someone is an answer as well. So, and if you just look at your financial situation in that same way, you're giving it an energy now that's different. You're not doing the story of scarcity, and you're doing little steps like, like I said before we got on, go and grab your wallets and put all your notes together. Like, don't just scrunch them up and put them in there. Put all your credit cards in order, whatever it is that you've got. Like, tidy it up. Same as your handbag, same as where you throw your bills. Just start to respect the fact that when your pay goes into your account, even just the gratitude, like, for me, it's when I see my shares doing particularly well, I'm like, oh, thanks for that. That's a bit exciting. Or I've made a really good decision. Yay me, pat on the back.
Actually celebrating it, because we're so uncomfortable with celebration, particularly as women, I think.
Yeah, or we can't share it with others. Like, sometimes if I buy myself something, I feel a little bit guilty, like, using it, because people will see it and then they'll judge me. Yeah. And then I've got all the judgment. But then, and then I'm like, well, okay, so you no point buying Louis Vuitton then, because you feel embarrassed to. This is my bag. I've had that since 2003. I bought it with my first commission check, the first big one. It's as old as the hills. Look at it. It needs a really good. I use it every day. Like 2003, I bought that.
It's beautiful.
So, but you know what? It's old. It'd be worth $100 now if someone was to buy it from a Vinnie store. So, but I love it. So, and it means something to me because it meant a particular stage in my life. And so when I see people who are doing well, or their business has just got an award, or I'm like, yeah, hell yes, girlfriend. And especially if they're a mum, because we know how hard this stuff is.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't talk about it enough. And I could get on here and go, oh, no, my life's amazing. Yeah, well, it's easy to make money. Knock yourself out. What are you doing wrong if you're not rich? No. The reality is it takes hard work. Some days are great. Some days are really crappy. There's divorces where you have to split half of it again. So if you just take where you're at, know that in 6 months you're going to take it again, and you're going to go, yay, or you're going to go, oh, I should have done something a bit differently. What energy am I giving money? How am I talking about it in my head?
I just love your wisdom, because that's what it is, right? It's not just philosophy and it's not just reckless experience. It's the beautiful mix of the two, which is wisdom.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't heard it that way before. Yes, I have wisdom that I don't. I've often thought of giving up the finance game because it is a really heavily compliance orientated paperwork. But I think I like to think, well, I know I do make a difference to people's lives. And
I think you already have, even just by sharing with us today. I feel changed just by having this conversation with you. Like, that's amazing.
Thank you.
So
That's
much.
so
And I think of that incredible advocacy work you're doing for women, right? For those, because I used to work in superannuation for 10 years, and that was always the concern, was the older women who didn't have super, who, you know, were on the breadline, and who's looking out for them, and you're looking out for them. And I think also that these conversations around financial literacy and what we change in ourselves therefore changes the experience our children will have, and embeds in them a level of financial literacy that will give them choice and freedom, which is what most of us want, right? It's choice and freedom.
Yeah.
So well said, Bridgie.
That's incredible. And you know what? This year has brought all that to the fore.
Yeah.
Because you know, we're really faced with this whole thing, and it's bringing up so much energy for people, positive and negatives. And I just think that, you know, we keep focusing on the good that we can change within ourselves and our own little families, because we don't know which one of our children is going to be running the country, is going to be making fiscal and monetary decisions for the next generation.
Yeah.
And they are going to be CEOs. They're going to be, you know, the way my daughter negotiates at 11, I swear she's meant for politics or something. I've raised a monster.
So great.
Some days, but you know, it's that. It's not even. It's just leaving a beautiful legacy. And so, you know, wouldn't it be incredible if our generation of mothers was known for the ones that bridge the gap between. You know,
creating a generation of compassionate leaders. Yeah.
Oh, could you imagine?
Oh,
like that gives me goosebumps.
I want to imagine. It's my dream, right? I mean, it's kind of the ethos of what Nourishing the Mother was founded upon, was life comes through women. We literally define who runs the world.
Right. Beyonce.
Yeah.
So
before we wrap up, do you have any last questions, Bridgie, before I do our quick fires?
No, I just wanted to say, you know, that we're just so grateful for having you on the podcast too, and that we're going to be bringing you into our community as well to do a workshop on that scarcity mindset and financial literacy with our children, which is
in Soul Driven Motherhood. So if you would love to join us with Jodie, then please make sure you jump into Soul Driven Motherhood, and we're very excited to be able to do that with you, and super grateful that you'd share your time and your wisdom to empower mothers to create a difference. It's really beautiful. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I have 3 quick fire questions we ask every interview person before we end. One of them is a time of immense growth. I feel like we've already spoken about a time when you've been deeply wounded and you've mined that experience to gain the golden light, essentially, of consciousness or meaning, wisdom out of it. Is there anything else you want to share about that time, or pick another time, or do you feel like that's
that's really definitive? Just to share very quickly, that year in 2008, I was pregnant with Maddie, my first child. I was working from home in a higher board position with the company because I could retire. You know, I didn't need to work, and I did all the calm birthing courses, and I was like, I'm going to be this Zen mother, and I bought a Thermomix so I could have organic baby foods and do it all anyway. So then I went to hospital with preeclampsia because the stock markets are falling, and I'm like, and then my daughter's born emergency C-section into this chaos. So that to me, monstrous. And then the universe cleverly said, holy crap, she's not going to be able to cope with this. We better give her a baby, a new one in her tummy. So that way she won't drink herself into oblivion. She won't do anything dumb because now she's pregnant with a second. And I loved him so much that I wouldn't do anything to myself because obviously and then I had two little ones.
They gave you life.
It gave me, because I could, in my mind, I couldn't do away with myself, because then that would be hurting my child. I could when he was born, because then I'd have enough people looking after my babies, for life insurance. So you do get very low and you do get very dark, and it's okay. And some of us, we should talk about that too, because there is light at that end of that tunnel. There is, there is hope, even when you're thinking this is hopeless. Even when you're thinking this is worthless, I'm worthless. This is awful. I can't see a way out. Someone with fresh eyes will be able to come in and go, I can see this because I'm not in it. I don't have all the emotion attached to it. So I'm going to be able to help you. So if you can see someone else in that situation, they probably won't reach out. So that's where we need to recognize that and step in and help where we can.
So beautiful.
That's defining time.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing also that depth. We really appreciate the vulnerability and strength that takes, and how that conversation alone can change somebody's life. So thank you. The next question is the books in your life that have been the most influential, or the books that you wish every woman would read in her lifetime, that if they could be a bundle that got given to every year 12 as she graduates, knowing she would read them, what would they be for you?
Out of all of the books I've read, one that it's old, but it stands the test of time, in my opinion, is Richard Branson's Screw It, Just Do It.
So good.
Because ironically, he has a really interesting way of dealing with adversity, and he's been open with his learning difficulties and all of that sort of stuff, and yet he's been really very powerful and influential. So and he writes it in such a simple way that you literally pick it up and you're just reading through. It's quite simple. But I was a massive fan of global economics, so I read a lot about China and the US and all of that sort of stuff. So I tend to read all of those sorts of things. But the Screw It, Just Do It is still a favourite.
What about your book? Where would we find your book?
I was asked about that this morning as well. My book is sold out, and I don't think I've got it advertised anywhere. So I'm in the decision making as to whether or not I update it and then publish it again.
Re-release.
So I've been through 3 different runs. Yeah, it's good, but it's old now. So, but if you can find it in secondhand stores and stuff, there's quite a few reprints. So,
what is it called?
It's called Surviving the Storm. And the first chapter is just all about my story, and then the rest of it is all everything you need to do to start again. So maybe I should summarize it and then just put it into a I will do that.
It sounds like a deeply purposeful. Yeah.
There must be so many people through this COVID situation that would really benefit from how you built yourself back up again.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it can be complicated though. So, I think at the end of the day, if people can summarize it and just get it into like a free ebook or something, then it might just give them the thought pattern to step themselves through something.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And our last question is, if you could have a billboard anywhere on any major superhighway in the world, what would it say?
I wrote my thesis for my master's degree on the lack of financial literacy in Australia. And so I think I would love it to say she changed the face of financial literacy.
Goosebumps. Celebrating that. Well done you. What a legacy.
It's a little bit big, isn't it?
I love it. Why shouldn't it be big? It has to be bold to change the world, right?
Yep.
There's no point
and
playing
we've got
small.
years to keep going, so you never know.
Thank you so much, Jodie. Please share with us where we can find you and get in connection with your work.
Okay, so probably the easiest thing is Instagram or Facebook, Jodie Nolan. You'll see Facebook, I put a lot of every day I kind of post about global economic stuff and stuff that's happening locally at home. So it's really quite economic, but it gives tidbits. So then that way people are, slowly picking up little bits of financial information without even realizing it. And Instagram or my website is Equus Group Wealth Management. But if you just Google Jodie Nolan, you'll see it come up.
We'll make sure we put all of those links in our show notes. So if you are wanting to know, dear listener, please check the show notes of this episode.
Thank you so much, Jodie, for being here. I'm just so grateful to have had you.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
So divine, and we look forward to sharing some more time with you in Soul-Driven Motherhood. Thank you.
What a conversation. There is so much in there, and we could have talked, but we thought we would wrap it up there for you with Jodie. And we really invite you to check her out online and to consider jumping into Soul-Driven Motherhood this week for our workshop with Jodie on scarcity, patterning, and financial literacy. So you can find where to access Soul-Driven Motherhood via our website, nourishingthemother.com.au, and connect with you, Jules.
Is thepleasurenutritionist.com and you, Bridge.
And me, suburbansandcastles.com. Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.